Peace and blessings, family. This is your brother, asarimhotep, with the Madhu Mandela Institute for the Advancement of Science and Culture, as well as the Martin Delaney Center for Egyptology. Today is Sunday, July the 18th, 2021. And as always, we have a very special and powerful guest who is no stranger to the Mbongi platform and the conscious community, and to a number of you who watch this show regularly, because we bounce from show to show. So you might catch me on his program talking mess every now and then we jump to Brother Unk, then jump to Brother Kofi, and that's just how we do. But today is a special day because we're going to talk about a recent book from our brother Garfield, titled Misconceptions and Misinformation by the Black Hebrew Israelites. So as a former Black Hebrew Israelite of the ISUPK out of New York City, this is a very interesting and personal topic. And so we're going to find out all about our good brother Garfield and what motivated this book, and a whole bunch of other stuff if we have time. All that and more when we return in just a moment. Peace and blessings, fam. Welcome to the Mbongi. Again, we're going to be interviewing our good brother Garfield Reid today. So it's not one of our just regular shooting the shit, as they say. So we gonna delve into the life and motivations of our good brother. But as always, and before we get started into that, I want to thank each and every one of you who are listening live, and then of course all of you who are catching the archives. And so I always like to acknowledge the people who have made themselves known in the chat. So peace to Sister Tamika. 764 is the code. And what is this? BX Alejandro, Kurti Mesura, Teti Ursa Ma'at Ra, D Satavo, Destro 0861, Sister Safa in the building. Gary Hart, Ali Dawood L, Colonel GT, Black Lion Supreme, Peace Fam, All Facts, No Fiction, DSR, Afro Consciousness, Thurman, Meredith, Sister Anusha, Texas in the building. And who else am I missing? Omar Reid, Sister Monica in the place. Montaya X, Everything is Everything, and Gillis SC in the building. So, in peace to everyone who is catching us live on Facebook, both on the Harold Johnson page and on the asarimhotep page. And if I haven't acknowledged you yet, I'll try to acknowledge you sometime throughout the program. But as always, just a few announcements before we get started. And as always, you can help support the channel by joining the Patreon page, and that's patreon.com/asarimhotep. Your contributions and support help to keep this channel rolling and also contributes to the upcoming documentary film Chiena Into, which will be highlighting the relationship between the Central African Bantu speakers, language and culture, and that of ancient Kemet. So if you want to support, that is one way in which you can do so. And there you'll get some perks, and one of them is exclusive and or interviews and videos. Y'all get first dibs at them. And so those currently right now, for example, are listening to and watching Dr. Modupe Oduyoye, a very powerful, Christian theologian, but he's also a linguist. And he has been studying for longer than I've been born the relationship between the Yoruba, the Hebrew, and ancient Egyptian languages and cultures. And he uses African languages, primarily ancient Egyptian and the Yoruba, to help bring clarity to obscure biblical concepts. And so, if y'all know me, I cite him all the time, in agreement and disagreement with some of his scholarship. But nonetheless, he is a very powerful elder, and I've had the opportunity to interview him. And so you can catch that interview exclusively on the Patreon. And lastly, you can support by purchasing one of these shirts. And so I have a whole bunch of different designs. Y'all know that I've renamed African Americans to the Ba and Kole and Kola. There's videos on that. There'll be a book, a short book on it in the near future. And of course, the Kimoyo, the renaming of African spirituality. And I have actually that shirt on. I don't know if you can see as we speak. So very comforting fit, stylish design, and it's some deep knowledge. And so on the Patreon as well, you'll be getting initiated into the Kimoyo Cosmogram. That's what you see, on the shirt right there. And last but not least, again, I guess the last one's supposed to be last but not least, be on the lookout for the book, Chiluba Maweja, Yoruba, Orisha, and Ancient Egyptian Ak, an exploratory etymological study. That should be out by the end of August, sometime around there. All righty. Enough of that. Let's get into it with our good brother, Garfield Reid of the Dagger Squad. And again, we are talking about his book, Misconceptions and Misinformation by the Hebrew Israelites, Volume 1. And you can go currently to brothergarfielduniversity.com and pick up a copy. And before y'all do that, I'm going to need every single one of y'all who is in the building to That is right. I'm going to need y'all to hit those likes. And if you are not a subscriber to this channel, make sure that you subscribe and hit the bell. We're trying to reach that 10,000 subscribers so we can do some more amazing things and bring this type of knowledge to the masses. And so I need y'all to like and subscribe to the channel. Why? Because we want to be very disrespectful to the YouTube algorithm. And so there's too much pseudoness on the web, and they can't see the real information because all the pseudos have all the subscribers. So we're going to change that in 2021, and you're going to help in that process. So make sure that y'all hit those likes and subscribe to the channel. And without further ado, the man of the hour, the Tower of Power, out of Jamaica, by way of New York City. Welcome to the program, Brother Garfield Reid.
Wow, what an intro.
What's up, family?
Hercules. Hey, peace and love, bro. Peace and love, man. Thanks for that intro, and thanks for having me on, man. It's a pleasure. It's an honor. I've been trying to shoot for this seat for like 5-10 years, and I finally made it.
Indeed. Yeah, man. And so we've had conversations, on this channel, on your channel, and other people's channels. Mm-hmm. But I want to treat you like this is your first time here, right? Mm-hmm. So what I want to do first, before we go into the actual book, is for you to just tell us a little bit about, your life, where you're from, how did you get into, this area of study, and your education, stuff to that nature. And so you can go.
All right. Well, education is long, so I hope you have time. All right. Growing up in Jamaica, I didn't grow up like the stereotypical Jamaican. My father was a owner of like 40 yellow cabs. He owned buses. Mm-hmm. He was a self-made man. He actually sold a house before I was born to actually buy his business. He took a chance on his whole marriage and everything. And yeah, he sold a house in what people know as Duane Park, 25 Bronte Way. That's where they used to live. And they moved to a place called Semantia Avenue and a place called CashApp Park. Nice residential neighborhood. He owned a house, and that's where I grew up. My entire life in Jamaica was at that house. And my mom was a history teacher. She was a Dr. Reid. So she was a specialist when it comes to history. So she would, at bedtime, and it's funny, I never really looked into this until I came here. She used to tell me Anansi stories going to bed. So, and then reminiscing on that now, when I rock with you guys and you guys start talking about the Akan and different stories of West Africa, I'm like, wow, my mom used to tell me Anansi stories. So growing up in Jamaica, I went to a school called Calvary Prep School, and every Sunday my mom would force me to go to Sunday school. So when I was 9 years old, I got baptized and the whole 9 yards, and I was a church guy. I felt Jesus was the way, and that's how I grew up. Christianity my whole life. In high school, I would be preaching, but at the same time, I'd be singing and entertaining and all that type of good stuff. When I left high school, I came here originally to go to college. When I started going to college now, I went to LaGuardia Community College first. That's the first college I went to. In that time period now in college, it's like a lot of transition took place. So I wanted to be a pastor, went to school, took some theological classes, and then, I met one of my best friends ever, Kirk Campbell. I never forget. He took me out of that Christianity, man. He took me out of it, brought me into the Nation of Islam. But in between that, I did a little Rastafarian thing, I was into the Rastafarian thing. Then while in college now, I showed a Khalid Abdul Muhammad tape. This was right after the Keene College incident, and sometime after the Keene College incident. So he was like the top guy, the Nation of Islam, popular and all that stuff. And when I went to school, LaGuardia, this is at LaGuardia at the time, I played a video, and this Jewish woman claimed that I was harassing her. So because I was walking behind her and said, "What's wrong with the video? You need to tell me what's wrong." I was pro-black, Khalid Abdul Muhammad, all that good stuff, Nation of Islam. I'm all hype. And the guy said they did what they did was they basically just banned me from the college. So that semester I was pretty much banned. The Nation of Islam flew in, and which I admired, and they basically came and represented me at the college. And I couldn't. It got to the point where they had like pictures, images of me because they thought I was going to try to sneak onto the college, because we used to have a Wednesday uprising club, and the uprising club, they didn't like the name because like, oh, if they're going up, where we going? You know, they just didn't like that. Because we were saying Marcus Garvey, Up Ye Mighty Race, Uprising Club, me and the Rastas, and Black Student Union, and all that different stuff. And the what do you call it now? So while I'm in college, they kicked me out. Ended up, we worked out a deal. I actually snuck back into the college and registered, meaning that they didn't. The person who registered me didn't know that I was not supposed to be registered. So I ended up going back to the school the following semester. And yeah, I mean, I didn't finish LaGuardia, but I'll tell you this: the experience there was, I think, I was trying to unite all the clubs, which was just crazy. I was trying to unite all the Caribbean clubs in New York City, all the Black student unions, and have them like. I was just doing so much. I was like this political guy, and this guy came to me and said, "You know, what was great about the Black Panther Party and different people? Sometimes the guy that speak is not the guy that's really in control." So the guy said to me, "You're so featured that your face is all over." And by the way, to the incident with Khalid Abdul Muhammad, they took funding from the school because of me. They actually, the Jews withdraw, and they actually had Judge, I forgot, we call them two token Negroes, came to the school to try to squash everything down and make it a kumbaya moment. And you know, we won't have people like Garfield speaking and doing anything anymore. And so when I re-registered with the school, the funniest thing is I was registered and legitimately in the school, but I had to hide like I'm there. I couldn't be in the Black student union. I couldn't, you know, I was like this mini Malcolm X walking around. It was just crazy. But so, anyway,
you couldn't be in a talent show.
Right.
Exactly. On stage.
But during that semester, though, I learned about something called the CLEP program. And what the CLEP program is, you basically just take the test for the course. So you don't have to go to school and whatever anymore. You just take the test, and when you get enough credits, you register for like a college, like an Empire State College or whatever, and you get your degree. So that was the quickest way to get a degree for me. But what do you call it? I did tests at NYU, Fordham, St. John's. My brother used to go to St. John's. So, I mean, I'm not claiming those schools, but I used to take tests there. And what it is basically, for anybody who wants to know what a CLEP program is, just Google it. And it will tell you in your state who accepted, how much, whatever. So that's pretty much how I basically got my degree fast. Because instead of you sitting down for 3 months or 4 months to take a course, you just go down the street, register at a school, NYU, Fordham, St. John's, and you just take the exam and you get the 3 credits or the 6 credits. So it was just pretty easy that way. And cheaper by the way, too, much cheaper. But anyway, after the incident when they kicked me out of school, that's when I actually started going to the slave theater, because the guy who represented me was connected. He had an organization called the Black African Holocaust Council. And they used to be on Flatbush. And where they used to be located was where Mosque number 7C was. So they used to train us. We used to do jujitsu and all this training with the Nation of Islam and all that karate stuff, kumbaya, whatever. Mm-hmm. So that's where I got attached to the Nation of Islam. And one thing the Nation of Islam did, they put a brother to work. I was working on movies with Spike Lee and all that stuff in the projects. I was bodyguarding Spike Lee. I worked at the you remember that award show where Snoop Dogg said, "Y'all don't give East Coast don't show no love to Snoop Dogg." Then F y'all that. I was right at the stage like this in my bow tie, suit and bow tie. And Biggie Smalls came up to me and said, "Bro, if I was you, I would move." And when he went up on stage, about 100 dudes ran on. I was like, damn, you know. But that was my experience in Nation of Islam, working in projects, working in Coney Island, working at 152nd and 8th, working at movie theaters, doing all over squashing beefs between different gangs. I'm right there on one side, brothers on the other side, guarding Minister Farrakhan, looking out for snipers. I did it all. Family, I remember Minister Farrakhan was in town, and I used to drive a burgundy Crusader. So Jamaicans in the 90s drove, that was our cars. That was like a Benz or a BMW for us. So the brother said, yo, the minister in town, he want to borrow your car. So they took my car, and I'm playing the minister while they're in my car. I don't know if he actually sat in my car, but he was being played at the time. And they put me like in this old van to go to the funeral home. And at that time, I was so in love with the Nation of Islam. This man walked past me, Asar. I felt like a body came into it. You like somebody so much, you get all spooked out. It's like a body came into me, like a spirit or energy came inside of me. And I was like, oh man, Minister Farrakhan is powerful, man. And then, they teach he's a Paul reincarnated or whatever they teach. He's an extension of Elijah. So, Minister Farrakhan was my guy.
That sounds familiar on the Hebrew Israelite tip, but keep going.
Mm-hmm. But one of the things that really, really turned me off, and I hope my elder is not watching this, they tried to kill my elder in Harlem. So it put me in a position. Khalid, this is why I text Malik Zulu Shabazz and said to him, you should have interviewed me before you wrote your book. Because there's another angle that you're not seeing here. How could me and my elder meet with Farrakhan before Khalid Abdul Muhammad? That was kind of bugged me out because I love Khalid Abdul Muhammad. I named my first child after Khalid Abdul Muhammad. So I was in love with Khalid, but at the same time, the leader was Minister Farrakhan. So you can't love the messenger but hate the leader. That was their thing. So now it got me in a crossroads. I love the Nation of Islam, but I just never liked what happened. And it kind of put me in a whole other space because Khalid's home was just like the slave theater. He would come and he'd make his little comments and throw his words, and it's like, you want to protect the brother, you want to be there for him, but you got orders, you can't leave him alone or whatever. And so the Nation of Islam with me, though, the reason why I never got my X, because I simply never recited. To join, you got to write a letter, the exact same letter like how Elijah Muhammad wrote to Wallace Dean or Master Farad Muhammad. So basically you're mimicking his writing and you had to write it. So it took you a while and you wrote the letter and then you submit it to Chicago. Then Chicago put you in what's called the Book of Life. I have never written to Chicago and said I don't want to be a part of the Nation of Islam. So technically, if it works out and the spaceships are true, I'm in the Book of Life. Just for the record. All right. All right. So after that, I pretty much did the school thing, went to Jamaica back and forth. I used to go to Jamaica like every other week because I used to like carry music artists up on visas and all that stuff. So that was like a hustle for me. So I used to do that. I used to work several jobs. I had like 5 jobs at one time.
So the stereotype is true about the Jamaicans and
20 jobs. Yeah, I used to work in the bank. I used to work in 2 jobs in the school. I used to work for security with X-Men, Nation of Islam, and I used to work for Cherry Communications. And I was just a workaholic, man, workaholic. So that's what the Nation of Islam, they'll put you to work. Let me just say that. One thing I'll say about them, they discipline and they'll make you go to work. 2000, the worst time of my life. My mom died. That was the worst thing. She died in a car accident, which was very, very hurtful. This was in August. As a matter of fact, I'm sorry. The year before was the worst day of my life. My father died August 15th, 2000. And the year after, my mom died August 2001. So it was almost a year apart. And of course, all the spook masters come to me. Oh, he called her to come and all this craziness. But it was actually a very bad time for me because, and a lot of people said, do I hate the Hebrews because of what happened to me? Did something tragic happen? No, actually, I was always anti-Bible because the Nation of Islam is anti-Christianity. They're anti-Christian Science. They are. So yeah, go ahead, brother.
They're anti-African too, but that's
Mhm.
another topic. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so that was a very, 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 very sad point for me. My mom just put a commercial in the paper. Oh, my husband, to my late husband, and she sent the newspapers, and then she came for a wedding, and on the way to the wedding, they had my sister was actually driving, and car flipped over like 15 times. The only person that passed was my mom. And the crazy thing is, I mean, I'm not spooky, but all her Jamaican friends came and said, we have a dream, somebody's gonna die on the way to the wedding. And I said, nah, nobody gonna die because I'm going. You know, so that was a low point for me. Very, 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 very low point. While in college though, I need to let everybody know this. I always was obsessed with Bible classes. I've always been a Bible guy. I've always been even when I went to the slave theater, they put me onto the whole Kemet thing. I left that part out. I mean, I fell in love with Kemet because my brother brought home Black Man and the Nile and the Family, and I stopped studying my schoolwork and just started reading Black Man and the Nile. I was just fascinated. I couldn't believe Dr. Ben. I didn't know who Dr. Ben was, and I never told my older brother this. I never told him that how that book changed my life. I need to tell him, by the way, too, because he's actually in town. Yeah, that book literally changed me, and it moved me in a direction I couldn't believe what Kemet did. So when people talk about Dr. Ben, they don't know what Dr. Ben brought. He was an antithesis to Elijah Muhammad saying the white man is the devil. So instead of we saying the white man is the devil to try to conquer the black inferiority complex, he brought and showed and proved our greatness and what we did in the past, which he was trying to tell him, because he used to go back and forth, him and Dr. Clark, with the Nation of Islam. So this was his way of saying, hey, we have greatness too, and we don't have to say we connected to no religion or nothing. This is just us, what we did as Africans. All right. After that time period, I mean, I could fast forward up until 2012 is when I used to do parties and promotions and all that stuff. That's when I met the brother Zan Lex. I met him for a Haitian. It was actually for the Haitian community. I did a fundraiser for them, and he actually helped out. He actually helped out and got the guy from Making the Band. What's his name? The guy that was the fake Jamaican, the Trini guy.
I remember the dude, but I don't know his name.
Yeah, he helped me out with that. So shout out to Mr. Lex for that. And
Zion Lion Lex.
Yep. That's why
I'm not gonna start that.
Yeah. No, it's all good. But so I knew him from that time period. When I came in the conscious community, 2000. Well, I was already in the conscious community technically, because the Black African Holocaust Council used to have their own lecture series. So that's where I met Ishaka Musa Barashango, to the point we got cool where he actually he was a part of the surprise party for me at juniors. So Dr. Ishaka Musa Barashango, he was like, don't hate white people and all that stuff. And, tell me, you guys got to carry on the legacy when we are gone. And, he was a Bible guy that said the characters were black, and he literally believed the book. So he's I could say he inspired me, but he was just basically saying research more and whatever. But he was just basically a believer that made everybody black. That's pretty much it. One more thing with the Black African Holocaust Council. We were on the ADL's watch list. And the reason is, the first conference that they held, Khalid Abdul Muhammad was the main speaker. So they did a whole thing on us as a group. And it's just, I won't even talk about what happened to a lot of people and their jobs and everything, but it was just crazy being a part of that group and how they were watched. Lenise Walters, I don't know if you know who Lenise Walters is, but she's the rapper. You're gonna know who I'm talking about, Queen Pen.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, Queen Pen. So in the 90s, they had an incident where actually she was fighting the cops. I got involved and I was actually arrested. Actually got released because everybody who was partaking was being rowdy and crazy. So they eventually dropped the charges. But yeah, she was basically fighting the cops, and they were all basically fighting the cops. But that's a whole nother incident. But anyway, the Black African Holocaust Council introduced me to all these people, Professor James Smalls, Queen Afua. When I saw Queen Afua on Sunday, I was shocked. I'm like, wow, she's been around. She don't even look like she aged. She don't even look like she aged, man. And then you had Alton Maddox with the whole Tawana Brawley stuff. And, you had Dr. Ben, you had Dr. Clark. When I saw Dr. Clark, he had no eyesight. So he was speaking from the top of the dome at the time and us dropping knowledge. He going on Islam, Farrakhan, and he don't care who is there. He just going in. And well, let me see. With the Black African Holocaust Council, we had pretty much everybody. We were actually the first people to have what's called a sovereign conference. So the sovereign conference was the Moors with the license plates, the IDs. You had Phil Valentine when nobody even know Phil Valentine at that time. You had you just had a bunch of conspiracy theorists and the sovereign stuff, and
that sounds like the place to be.
So I know Phil Valentine and them. I mean, I used to go to his house on Carroll Street and all that stuff. So I know Phil Valentine for a long time. I slept at his house, listened to Bobby Hemmett, woke up, Bobby Hemmett was still speaking.
So that's because they talk for a long time. I went to a lecture in Houston. This is when I was first getting acquainted with that. Basically, the New York people of what is becoming the conscious community at this time. What I really call the metaphysics community. But so Phil Valentine had a lecture that was 8 hours long on Saturday, whatever that day was. And then if you had questions, you had to come the next day and pay to ask questions. So he was going to do another 4 to 8 hours of question and answer about what he talked about on Saturday. I'm like, this is too much. I'm used to the long hours because, when we would teach in the Hebrew Israelite classes, sometimes they would just get so, as the church would say, spirit filled, that you go all till 4 or 5 in the morning, and class started at 7 p.m. the previous day. But didn't mean to interrupt, but I just want to let the audience know that, I'm letting them rock because I want people to, before we get into the text itself, I want people to get a good understanding of the life experience that led to the particular work, and just showing that, regardless, whether it's Brother Garfield in particular or just authors in general, that, a work that they may have worked on physically for, a few years may have really taken 20 or so years in learning and development and experiences to get the particular types of interests. So we've learned so far that, of course, in his home state of Jamaica, he was interested in biblical studies, very early. Then he later moved to the United States, particularly the New York, and was interested or got interested into the studies of the Nation of Islam and joined the Nation of Islam. He didn't get his ex though, but some conflicts arose, due to his relationship and love for Dr. Khalid Muhammad, and later on he met was aware of Dr. Ben and the whole slave theater. So for everybody who ain't familiar with New York, the slave theater was like the hub of consciousness, back in the day, and all the great speakers and scholars that we love and revere have come through that place and shared their research with the public. So a lot of those old videos that you may see may have been taped, there at the slave theater. But anyway, so he's introduced to the conscious community and the Dr. Benz and the John Henry Clarks and the Khaleds and all of this other kind of stuff. And so now we're entering in, because he mentioned Brother Zion Lex, and some others. And so now there's the Hebrew community.
Mm-hmm.
So going to fast forward just a little bit from there into the more modern experience with the Hebrews on social media, and what brought about the conversations with them, and then how did that specifically lead to the book under discussion right now?
All right. I was in a relationship,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the woman actually moved out.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a very horrible experience for me. And I started going on YouTube, looking through some videos. I saw Brother Polite. Brother Polite on Sonetta. And when I saw Brother Polite, all right, cool. Saw Brother Polite, I was like, hey, he was beating up this guy named Hebrew. I forgot what his name was. I was like, yo, I could do that. That's easy, And I would just watch the videos, and then I started getting on Facebook. I was always on Facebook, but I just stopped using my channel, my Facebook social media. I stopped using it for a while. So when I went on there, I joined one group, Christians versus Muslims debate. And that group, there was a guy by the name Mikael Ben Israel. He was on Sonnet the other day saying he started the Dagger Squad. He's the reason why the Dagger Squad started. But basically, if everybody in that group grew so much because of me. Even Wesley Muhammad was a part of that group. It was a small group and it grew. And then when it grew, it basically just put me in other groups. People started adding me to other groups. You need to do this, you need to do that. And then I became then Unc started observing me years later. And I started the blog talk. One thing I need to go back in the past and talk about is that I was very familiar with Steve Coakley, extremely familiar. And for those who deal with the conspiracy theory stuff and all that stuff, and in fact, I mean, it's many years anyway. My whole team went into Yale. I won't say how they went into Yale, but they got some of them books that Steve Coakley likes, some of them conspiracy books and all that stuff. So, it was crazy. But what do you call it? So basically, as far as the YouTube, I mean not YouTube, Facebook, Blog Talk, started the Blog Talk radio. And if you go to my Blog Talk, I got a lot of Blog Talk information. So hey, it was crazy. And Unc, I met Unc, and that was like, Unc was like, yo, what you bringing, bro? Ain't nobody bringing that stuff. That textual, he said, that textual critique, Garfield, textual critique. and Gozy started coming around, and Gozy and them started like, yo, this guy Garfield, man, he's a beast. And they invited me to join their group. And I wasn't really into joining groups, I thought just being cool with Unc and Jonathan was good enough for me, but we had Raw Bond and a bunch of different people, and we started the Dagger Squad and say, we're gonna call it the Dagger Squad. And we're gonna start debating. And we had the group, the Hebrew Israelites versus Kemetic Science. That group started at 200 people and went up to around 25, 24. I mean, it's like 18,000 people in there now. But I definitely built that group from scratch. I mean, I didn't start it. My man Lamont Hart started it, and another dude. But bro, that group everybody and their mama came in there to come get me. It was crazy. So that's where I was, everybody started recognizing me and everything, and what I was doing as far as scholarship and all that stuff. And then the whole Team Osiris thing. I went on Sarnetta to do I did a one-on-one with Sarnetta out in public. And he never heard me speak or anything. He just took Unk's word for it. Unk said, let's let him speak. Don't worry about it. Just let him rock out. And Sarnetta took a chance. And like, damn, bro. Oh, man. And after that, Sarnetta started calling me, yo, I got this Hebrew on the phone. Get him. So that's when me and when he found out I was in New York.
Quiet as kept. Debating Hebrews is really kind of how the Armor Squad was developed, because that's how like me, Sanjetti, and Unk became familiar from Blog Talk. And the Hebrews was talking crazy, all reckless, and it was like, nah, we got this info for you. And that's just how the group formed, battling the Hebrews. But go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so you had Raw Bond and myself and a couple of different people, and it was a bunch of us. Some of the members that we had back then. The other day, I found a post, and he's like, "Damn, that dude was up." Nah, man, don't put that out there. So that dude is so pseudo. But it was fun, man. Being on Facebook was fun, and it kind of relieved me and got me over a situation, and it got me to a certain point where. Facebook is Facebook, man. I used to have one Facebook with like my old classmates and all that stuff, and and all that different stuff. But I'm here, man. I'm here.
So now, somehow, through all that, you decided to write this text. Again, for those who don't understand why we're here today, the misconceptions and misconceptions and misinformation by the Black Hebrew Israelites. I'm sorry, I got this big light here, so this is the glare. But so the question is, what are you addressing specifically in a text? Like what are you trying to accomplish by this? Why the Black Hebrew Israelites of all the Israelite people who claim to be Israelite? Why not the Chinese folks who claim to be Israelites, or the Pakistanis who claim to be Israelites, or the Native Americans?
They don't call me Hamite for one, so that's why. Well, earlier I was on Sarnetta, and a gentleman, Daniela, called in and said that Lion Lex said that you used a source that, his reviews were horrible. So I was explaining to him, I use a source not really for the sake of scrutiny, but to prove a point. And one of the things I'm trying to do with the book is start a dialogue where we could look at things differently as far as how cross-culturalism and syncretism works. Because we love to say, hey, they stole it from Egypt. They stole it from this. And I think that conversation is like a revolving door. It's not going to be solved. And I think, remember I came to you and said, could you do a chapter for me? Stories Have No Borders. And you gave me a book and said, this book would be perfect. I didn't use the book, but almost in every chapter, instead of me saying they stole from Egypt or stole from Assyria, stole from Mesopotamia, I have a whole section called Stories Have No Borders. So when I use this gentleman, I'm basically showing a connection with the cultures that they were a part of and how it ended up in the storyline. For example, in the flood story, there's an element in the Greek flood story that you only find in the Bible, but yet still the Bible is influenced from Mesopotamia. How did this Greek element that's only in the Greek flood end up in the Bible? So this is what Philip Wagenbaum is doing, but I'm not doing it as a negative. Like to say, you see, y'all copy the Greeks. I'm not doing that. What I'm trying to do is saying that This is what we call old-fashioned, what Reggie would say, Brother Reggie would say, syncretism. So I said it's a shared culture. That's what I'm trying to emphasize. So that's one of the things I'm trying to get at, more of an academic dialogue with people who are just centrally just believers. If they're no, and by the way, ladies and gentlemen, I don't mean this as a disrespect. They are no different than anyone arguing that Spider-Man is real. And I hope people understand where I'm going. If you have an argument with your 4-year-old right now about Spider-Man, that's the same thing like arguing with a Hebrew Israelite. So how do you get someone who believes Spider-Man is real to have an academic discussion? Well, hey, this is what the book is trying to do.
But don't you? This is, and for those who are new to my channel and don't know who I am, I used to be a Hebrew Israelite. Back then, it was called the ICUPK, the Israeli Church of Universal Practical Knowledge. And one of the things that I've come to learn over the years is that the biblical text itself is not only anti-African, but is anti-intellectual. And those who adhere to the text and its values and worldview also adopts this anti-intellectualism stance. And so I think, answering your question in regards to how do you convince someone that Spider-Man is not real, I don't know the answer, but I'm going to say it's going to be very difficult in the case of the biblical folks, because the book itself is anti-knowledge, is anti-critique. And you know this from the very beginning of the book, because Adam and Eve were instructed not to eat from the tree of knowledge, of the knowledge of good and evil. It's really the tree of knowledge, because you can only, is good and evil. How do you know what is good and what is evil? You have to be able to contrast that. And so from the beginning of the text, you can tell that God meant for human beings to be cattle, not intellects. And so all throughout the text, they're fighting against intellectualism. And so now when you're trying to argue like source critique, you know, literary critique, you know, you're talking about methodology and stuff to this nature, there's not going to be a very fruitful conversation with, you know, the vast majority of individuals in this group, because they don't value wisdom and scholarship and things of that nature. So that's why they can come to you with these crazy new age sources, you know, from Babylon to Timbuktu, and really try to argue with you, because just because it's written in a text with a belief in an ideology that they agree with, that makes it scholarship, because it's in the text. Is somebody wrote it down.
Yep.
You know.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. I think, I mean, one of the things I point out in the book, moving on from chapter 1, because chapter 1 is really a friendly chapter. I do point out some, yeah, it's friendly. I mean, it has some daggers in there.
The other chapters are not friendly.
Well, the Exodus chapter, no Exodus, no religion. What I'm pretty much doing is allowing folks to see where academia is at when it comes to like the Exodus. And one of the main things is where Moses and Joshua and them went, when they went to conquest, or when the routes that they took, or what they said happened. And what happened is archaeology has found out that the places where Moses said he went, they were uninhabited at the time. There are 4 main areas that was uninhabited during that time period. So he couldn't have defeated anybody or fought with anyone, because there's nobody there to fight with to begin with. So what archaeology is doing is trying to bridge a gap. It's trying to bridge a gap between what the Bible is saying and why are they saying this at this time period. Because obviously, I was talking about this earlier, that there was no Hebrew text at 1500 BC for what's his name to write at the time. You know, they were basically, if Moses was coming down a hill with some hieroglyphics, whoa, he would have been carrying about 1,000 different bricks or laws to carry down. I mean, come on, it would have been too much. But in the Exodus, it really breaks down the folks where they went, how they went there, and so forth, and what happened, what it is that archaeology is saying, what is history saying. And if you look at Donald P. Rensford, who's a very balanced approach, an Egyptologist for the years, a lot of people use his book. He's saying basically most of the eras that Moses, quote unquote, or whoever is writing the first 5 books or the Exodus tradition lines up with more of a 7th century BC. That's when that era is populated, 7th century, 6th century BC. So that's when it's populated. So that's when the writing may have started. We don't know. We don't know. We don't know when it has started, because remember, somebody is writing retroactively. And with the human being and the human mind, you're telling me you're trying to write a story and retroact something that happened years ago. So you see it with the mistakes like Chaldea. The Chaldeans didn't come into the area until 9th century BCE. So if Abraham is from Ur of Chaldees and he's from those Chaldeans, he couldn't have been in 2000 BC being in the era because they weren't there. But those type of things to a believer, that's just the white man science. That's just the white man science.
Yeah, well, we get that all the time. Until the white man says something that they agree with, then it's no longer the white man science. But yeah, I was just glancing and I saw in the chapter, and I guess I'm just going to read off the chapter titles real quick. So Bereshit, then no Exodus, no religion. In Joshua Conquest, chapter 3, the lost tribes have been found, Passover and its origins, Hezekiah, Sennacherib, Sennacherib, I think that's how you pronounce it. The lost tribes of Judah, 70 AD, and 1 million Jews exiled to West Africa. Ethiopia is not Ethiopia. Is Yahweh an Edomite God? And did Moses write the Torah? Doublets and contradictions. Then we got sources. Where do we go from here and what we learn from this book? But in the no Exodus, no religion chapter, you have a section on there where, you're kind of introducing like the types of evidence that is respected in the field. And I just lost it. Now I got to try to find it again.
Page 30, I think it's 32.
34, yeah,
32. 32.
So scholarly approaches to the Exodus, archaeological, textual, philosophical, and I would argue even linguistic, but not too many people, that's a whole discipline. Because just to what you were saying, you can tell, like, even in the Old Testament, certain words that they were using can only be written for example, at the time of the Greeks. Because of just the way, like if you're saying pyramesis, allegedly where they had to do the work, like that even the way that you pronounce that in the Old Testament is Greek, and there's some other Greek names and things of that nature, and so it lets you know that a lot of this stuff was written at a very later time than allegedly when a lot of this stuff was supposed to happen. But when you do textual criticism and you look for archaeology, like what are you looking for in an archaeological dig that might answer a question relating to, like, so this is going to be my question to you. So, like, what should we be looking for archaeologically, for example, regarding the Exodus? Like if we were to find this would give us credence or be able to make the argument. Like, what kinds of things would we be looking for?
I mean, when you look at what the 10 plagues, like the Bible is saying on the book is, I call my well, Bible means book. So when it talks about the 10 plagues and the things that happened, the blood, the Nile blood, the full of blood, and different things that happened, the drowning of the Pharaoh's army and all those different things, you're looking for something that's going to be like so explicit that there's nothing to debate about it. And what happens is that with the Exodus, the stories are so fantastic. We'd call it fantastic foolishness, but it's just, it's like, I'm not saying that Exodus never happened from Egypt, by the way, just for the record, because people left from Egypt all the time. It's just that the story in the Bible is not real. That's all I'm saying. Because when I talk about the Yahweh stuff And you know what? Let me finish up the archaeological stuff first.
Mhm.
As far as archaeology, we would have to find many things that refer in the 10 plagues, which many people have tried to answer. I mean, but the problem with trying to find a specific group coming out of Egypt is that Egypt was like America. Everybody come. They had a free pass. They had an open border policy. You know, Trump couldn't be president over there, boy. He'd have shut that border down. But that's probably the downfall of Kemet. But it's also what kept the economy running, because you want to be the guys that have all the workers and produce everything so that you could be the central hub for trade. So people would trade with you and trade this and trade that. So that's why Egypt did what they did. You know, but as far as archaeology, man, there's a lot of things they'd have to find, a lot of things, you know, and that blood in the water in the river, that's huge, because every cup that had water actually was supposed to have blood too in Egypt. So that's wow.
And then
That's
what kind of blood was it? Was it O positive, O negative, what, ABO? What type of blood? Yeah, something that they like scholars mention is, for example, given the amount of people, like it's talking about 400,000 men, and but was really more so like 1 million or so folks that was supposed to have left out of Egypt. Like, people don't think about what would 1 million people look like leaving out at once from a place. Let's just regardless of how they left, whether they just all died at once or they just left at once, you know how much of an impact on the economy that would have. And at this particular time when the Exodus was supposed to happen, actually Egypt was flourishing, expanding, and increasing its wealth. You know, and so, like, who are the artisans? Who are the people growing the food? Who are the people sewing and making the garments and things? What were these 1 million people enslaved doing? So if you take 1 million folks out of an area at once, you know, the economy crashes. This is for folks who haven't read the text yet, how Europe underdeveloped Africa.
Walter Rodney, right?
Walter Rodney. You know, that's one of the things he talks about in terms of how the extraction of all of these Africans impacted the continent as a whole, in terms of its ability, one, to defend itself, in terms of its wealth and things. When you take a whole bunch of people at once from an area, it has a very large impact. And so that would show up on the archaeological record. Where are the tents that they would have to sleep under? You know, how did you feed? So even if you got manna from heaven, and with the birds and whatnot, where are the 1 million bird bones in one area that would give some kind of insight, you know, into to the storyline? It's just like, there's little stuff that people don't think about, don't add up. But I'm sorry, continue.
You know, this is not in the book, but it should be. I couldn't find a real good source for it. And what happened is, the Bedouin, they found evidence of the Bedouin living in the areas where that they're supposed to, the Exodus route, which is around 6,000 years ago. They found evidence of those particular people. And I'm saying to myself, how is it they could find something from 5,000, 6,000 years ago, but they can't find nothing from the Exodus? It's crazy. That's just, whew.
And then, like, of course, all of those people didn't make it. Did they have any burial rituals, ceremonies? Were there graves along the way? You know, did they bury anybody with certain type of grave goods? Like, this is what the archaeologists would look for. If there's burials, sometimes groups like to bury the dead with items. Like, of course, the Egyptians took it to a whole nother level, but in general, that's what they like to do. So when you're able to open these graves and you see these grave goods, you know, a lot of that can help us to determine dating. to determine, things as interesting as like trade, because those trade items may have, ended up in the grave. Writing in terms of language, if there was anything written down, in the grave. It's a whole bunch of stuff, but not one evidence, not one toothpick was found for the Exodus. Nothing, not one old person's staff, that fell into the ground. Nothing, and this is very problematic, for a lot of folks who are trying to prove, this and that wrong, this and in the Bible right.
What seems to be extremely problematic also. Did you have another question? Or
Go ahead.
Is the Elephantine papyri, which is around 400 BC. So this Elephantine papyri predate all existing Hebrew Bible manuscripts, giving historians a unique insight into how Judaism.
Hold on.
This is page 49.
49. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, at the top. All right. It's giving historians a unique insight into how Judaism was conducted in the 5th century BC. They prove that a polytheistic sect of Jews existed about 400 BC who seem to have had little knowledge of a written Torah or the narratives mentioned therein. So far as we learn from these texts, Moses might never have existed. There might have been no bondage in Egypt, no exodus, no monarchy, no prophets. There is no mention of other tribes and no claim to any heritage in the land of Judah. Among the numerous names of colonists, Abraham, Jacob, Joseph, Moses, Samuel, David, so common in later times, never occur, nor in Nehemiah, nor any other name derived from their past history as recorded in the Pentateuch and early literature. It is almost incredible, but it is true. One thing people got to know about the Elephantine papyri, they do celebrate something they call Passover. But the Passover they celebrate did not have anything to do with the Exodus or Moses. So remember,
it was Elephantine in Egypt, correct?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Right,
Elephantine, yeah. So the Elephantine, so I go on to ask a couple of questions. But what I talk about the Elephantine papyri more in the chapter on the Passover. But the Passover was an instruction by Darius. And Passover, it doesn't seem there was a set date because they keep asking what day you're going to celebrate Passover on. And in the chapter on Passover, I actually go into the Zukru festival, which is actually mimicking exactly what Passover is as far as celebrating the day and everything. So the Zukru festival is actually they found it in the Ugaritic, in the what do you call it text? The Emar text. And the Emar text, Daniel Fleming was the leading guy. He's one of the guys I interviewed on the 20 for 20. And Richard Hess is who I took it from his book, but I know he took it from Daniel Fleming. So either way, where I quoted from, it would be the same anyway, because he pretty much took everything from Daniel Fleming's book. But the point is, the Passover they are celebrating that Elephantine had nothing to do with an Exodus. And this is 400 BC. This is telling us a lot of things. We don't have to say absence of evidence means nothing. No, we have the evidence. The evidence is saying, and by the way, they also reached out to the Samaritans and to the Judeans living in Judah. And they asked for permission to build a temple, which is against Deuteronomic law. So if the book existed at the time, they wouldn't have given. Why are they giving these people in another area permission to build a temple?
Now, and I know I'm jumping, but when I was a Hebrew Israelite, one of the first things that they tell you is color scriptures. That's usually your entryway into Black Hebrew Israelitism. And especially if you're coming from the One West schools, they have this thing called the nation chart, or the
12 tribe chart.
The 12 tribes chart. And so, of course, I was from the tribe of Judah because I'm an African American and I was, born here in North America. So you, according to the doctrine, be from the tribe of Benjamin, coming from Jamaica or whatnot. And so, the whole idea is that we were the lost tribes of Israel that was scattered throughout North, South, and Central America. But then you come and interrupt the whole conversation with a chapter called, starting on page 91, The Lost Tribes Have Been Found. What do you mean the lost tribes have been found? I was told in the early 90s when I was a Hebrew Israelite that we was the lost tribes of, and we was found here in the Americas. But what do you mean by the lost tribes have been found? What you talking about?
It's actually a jab, and
Garfield?
I'm trying to be funny. But when I said the lost tribes have been found, because if you was lost, basically, I put in here. I use Rabbi Pamela Barmash, Dr. Rabbi Pamela Barmash. She basically lays out that 90% of the people stayed back, and they didn't go away when the Assyrians. And most of them actually joined the armies of the Assyrians. And actually, there's documentation of actually what they were doing. Some of them actually lived in Assyria and actually owned slaves in Assyria. This is how deep it goes. But the truth of the matter is, several things stop the Black Hebrew Israelisms or anybody claiming that they're lost tribes.
Mm-hmm.
The second Esdras is an AD era book. They believe it's Ezra from the 5th century that wrote it. Because remember, in Ezra, he's saying that the lost tribes is going to come back to Israel. Now, in 2nd Esdras, it's saying that they are somewhere else, another land. So he's trying to tell them it's somewhere else. So now they believe that this 2nd Esdras, which is an AD era book written after 70 AD, is Ezra writing in 5th century BC. So once that's proven that it's an AD era book, that kind of knocks the lost tribes argument, not only for Black Americans and people who are part of this Hebrew Israelism, whatever. It also kills British Israelism. It kills the Christian identity craziness, and it kills almost every lost tribe claimant all over the world. Because once you take away 2nd Esdras, and then you look at the archaeology of 90% remaining in Israel, there's no lost tribes, and we know where the 10% went. We know exactly where they went, and how the Bible knows, because the Bible got the information from the Assyrian records. Because how is it that you get beat up and all that stuff and be moving around, and you gonna document? Yeah, they went to Hala. How you know they went to Hala in Assyria? Because you have the Assyrian records. But pretty much the lost tribes have been found. It's not. I just go into the history of Prester John and Eldad the Danite, and him talking about they feeding him food to fatten him up to eat him, and these Romanos tribe tried to eat him, and they ate his friend, and he made this fantastic story. But this is the key, though. I can't prove this, and I'm going to say this on the record, but I can't prove it. This is my personal theory. This is not academia. When Eldad the Danite called himself that, he called himself that because of Danite being Samson being a Danite. That's what Ben-Dor said. But the reason why Ethiopians today claim, when they claim Israel, is because they claim Danite because of Eldad the Danite. No one before his time period I found yet. I'm not going to be absolute with it, but I am suggesting, outside of academia, that the reason why Israelites claim Danite out of Ethiopia, the Ethiopians claim it, is because of Eldad the Danite. If he didn't go and say, hey, I went to Ethiopia and all that stuff, they would have never claimed it. They would have left it alone.
Well, speaking of Ethiopia, you have a chapter. Ethiopia is not Ethiopia. And, there are still people who believe that modern Ethiopia is the ancient Ethiopia that was mentioned, by the Greeks and, of course, the Bible itself. So what do you mean by Ethiopia is not Ethiopia? Is Ethiopia lost? And did we need to find it? Was there's a lost tribe of Ethiopians that we need to find?
Nah, Ethiopia. This chapter was the hardest chapter to write, because I know the Rastafarians are gonna kill me when I go to Jamaica for that week. I'll probably not come back, because I even have family members who have moved to Ethiopia and claimed some of the land Haile Selassie had given to the Jamaicans. Yeah, one of the questions I had for Jonathan Owens when I just met him is that I'm confused. I said, and this was like 6 years ago, I said, I'm confused. Is Cush Ethiopia, Nubia, Ethiopia, or is the Ethiopia? Because I'm confused. It seems like the Bible. This is what I asked him. I don't remember what he said, but I know from that time period till now, I've been puzzled. I've looked at the biblical scripture where they're describing, and this is where Dr. You pronounce his name better than I do. Oyo.
Oduyoye.
Yeah, Oduyoye. His information came in very important because the Kush, it seems like, based on what he's saying, it seems like the word Kush was used, although the original word that was used at times wasn't Kush. It was possibly another word being used because Kush is centrally southern Egypt, northern Sudan, modern day Sudan.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, Kush is used in other places in the Bible, like Nimrod is from Kush. Is that the Kush, the same Kush? So this is where a lot of the confusion comes in, where we try to say the Sumerians are, you know what I'm saying? And they connect because of that particular thing in the Bible, which started that research. So what happened is what the doctor is saying, and let me actually find his actual quote that I used from him, so I could be directly representing what I'm saying. But there's a lot of things in here that a lot of people not gonna like, but hey, you know, that's me, man. Like the Ethiopian kings trace back their lineage to Astar and son Mahar and not Solomon. That's what the Aksumite kings did, and they didn't start claiming Solomon until probably like around the 11th century. Let me get the quote right here. I think it's right 188. Yeah, I think it's right here. But the word that we're talking about is Kush. And what happened is the way it's used is not always used the same way for every single thing. Similar to the Mesopotamian tale of a monarch, the tree of life and the Eden tale. Okay, here we go. It also alludes, let me read from here. Pishon, Gihon, Hiddekel, the Tigris, and Ferat are the four rivers mentioned in Genesis 2:10-14 as being associated with the Garden of Eden. It also alludes to Cush, which has been translated / interpreted as Ethiopia, but is regarded by others to be synonymous with Kosea. This is page 186 at the bottom on the right-hand side. Kosea, a Greek term for the Kassite homeland. So that's what he's saying, which a lot of scholars agree with that the term which should be used, it shouldn't be Kush. It's really, they're talking about the Kassite homeland. So when we see Kush, it's used broadly at times, but it's really not the right word to be used. I don't know. I've never really looked at the Hebrew to look at all the terminology of Kush, but that's just what most scholars are saying at this time.
I know that with Oduyoye, he mentions, at least in this respect, Kush in Africa, because they describe the tall giants, which, you know, this is the home of the tallest and darkest people, you know, on the planet in this particular area. This is where Kush was in northern, what is now modern or North Sudan. And so I think it's within that context for at least that. But just as you said, I'm familiar with that as well, that there's other places, you know, called Kush, and that poses a problem, you know, for trying to identify the particular area. But it's just like, even with, it's the same thing with like Punt, you know, in the Egyptian text. So at times it looks like it's over there in what, modern Eritrea, Somalia, but in other times they're clearly referencing what is what we call Yemen and Southern Arabia, in that area. And so, you know, again, this also poses the question of, you know, trying to use our modern sense of geography and trying to, you know, retroplant it back in those days, and trying to make it fit nicely, and that's not always the case. And so they didn't know about Africa. There was no Africa then, and what they and how they separated places may not be the same as how we would separate and put borders. And so from a methodological point of view, a scholastic methodological point of view, those are things that you have to keep in mind when you're doing, you know, research and trying to locate, places and people, you know, in history that don't live in a space that, you know, everybody recognizes like we do today. But I wanted to, well, before we do that, I just want to say for those of you who are just joining the channel, I am interviewing our good brother Garfield Reid, who has written a text, Misconceptions and Misinformation by the Black Hebrew Israelites. So we're just kind of jumping around, talking about various things, you know, in his book. And so those who are new to the channel and, you know, just joining us, I'm going to need y'all to pause for a second and that is right. That is hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. We want to be very disrespectful to the algorithm of YouTube and make sure that this video reaches everyone's feed because this is a very important topic. And ultimately, at least in my opinion, it is really kind of clearly stated in the title, but it's really trying to, it's an attempt, like with many other scholars, to raise the level of consciousness and scholarship in the community so that we can move forward in terms of the direction and unifying and doing things that we need to do for our children and our grandchildren and things moving forward. And it's a lot of misinformation and roadblocks to critical thinking that we have to overcome, because part of the reason why we can't unite is because you have people thinking that there's something else than who they are, and then they don't want to join up with other folks who are who they are because they think that they are who they are not. And this is, you know, been very problematic. You know, everybody's trying to run from Africa, run from their own history. And so we're everything. We're the lost. We're always lost. It's the lost tribe of Shabazz. It's the lost Hebrew Israelites. You know, we are the original Native Americans. We're always trying to be somebody who we're not. And so this is one of the reasons I appreciate, you know, this text. I haven't fully read it yet, so I just got it Monday, but y'all know I'm in school and work. So and I'm editing the book, trying to get this published for Dr. Shalima Lima Mukinge. So I'm publishing this book for him. It's Muntu Wa and Zombie, Portrait of Human in God's Special Creation. So I have to dib and dab in the book, you know, in the time being. But one that I did fully read is the chapter is Yahweh an Edomite God. This is just the question itself is disrespectful to all Hebrew Israelites. Well, the Black Hebrew Israelites. Why? Because when I was a Hebrew Israelite, Edom was the white man. And everything evil, everything wrong was Edom, aka / Esau. And we should avoid any and everything to do with those people. But it seems like you're saying that the very name of God, the very concept of God, by the way of Yahweh, is in fact the God of the Edomites. Is that true? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And how can we prove that? You know, they're gonna be like, prove it, show and prove. What do you mean?
Well, basically, at the beginning, I used Mark Smith's work. I mean, the early history of God, Yahweh, and the other deities in ancient Israel. And what's the key verse that people argue about in theology is Deuteronomy 32:8-9, where it casts Yahweh in the role of one of the sons of El, here called Elion. When the Most High Elion gave to the nations their inheritance, and bear in mind, look at this now, the Most High Elion, and we know El was the highest chief god in the Levant, gave to the nations their inheritance. When he separated humanity, he fixed the boundaries of the peoples according to the number of divine beings. Now he's now saying for Yahweh's portion is his people, Jacob his allotted heritage. So El is saying, hey, I'm giving you Yahweh now. So all people who come from Jacob, so this is the writer saying this is when we got the God Yahweh to be our God. Now people got to understand something here, right? If Yahweh is an Edomite God, Garfield, why are you saying that? Because remember, Israel has the theophoric element of El attached to it. Why aren't these guys called Israel? They're never called Israel. They're called Israel because originally you worship El, showing the Canaanite root to who you are. So the Bible actually tells on itself. But anyway, and where does Yahweh come from? The thing about Yahweh is we don't find him in Syria. We don't find him in Canaan. We don't find him nowhere around that area. So we can't say, okay, he comes out of here. The oldest record we find of Yahweh is with the Egyptians. There goes those people y'all love to hate again. Kemet folks. So we found a record of Yahweh with the Egyptians called the Shasu, appearing in Egyptian records from the 1500s to the 1100 BCE. They receive a negative description, often characterized as robbers and brigands. According to the Egyptians, the Shasu lived in Edom and the Negev, which the records term as the land of the Shasu. The Shasu tribes of Edom and Seir with the Shasu clans. So what I went on to show, not only is that the records is there, I go into the biblical records. The biblical records, let's look at Judges. Judges 5:4. Lord, when thou wentest out of Seir, which is Edom, when thou marchest out of the field of Edom, the earth trembled and the heavens dropped the clouds into also dropped water. The mountains melted from before the Lord, even that Sinai from before the Lord God of Israel. Now, this is the scripture that the nation of Islam always talk about. God is a man. Habakkuk 3 verses 3. God came from Teman and the Holy One from Mount Paran. So how could God come from somewhere, first of all? And where is Teman located? That is the key. The geographical term Teman means south, and it is used to designate Edom, both east and west of the Araba. Yahweh's links to Teman also appear at Kundalet Arjud in northern Sinai. A 9th century BC inscription found there further emphasizes Yahweh's southern character. It reads, I bless you by Yahweh of Teman and by his Asherah. Scholars have no way of knowing if the Israel of the Merneptah stele were worshippers of Yahweh. The Israel of the Merneptah stele has provided clear evidence to show they worship Yahweh. The god El and not Yahweh is considered the original God of Israel. All right. So we go on to start looking at Esau now and going into Esau and Edom and why they call that and how they're connected, and through the Jacob tribes, they said this was a pun and all this different stuff. But Jacob and Esau wrestling in the womb is actually in chapter 1 in the Stories Have No Borders, where I show like the same storyline, actually the same thing, grabbing the feet, stealing his rights and everything is in Greek culture. Not saying anybody copied, but the story was there for them to use if they were in the Greek world at the time. So the Jacob wrestling with an angel wrestling in the womb is also for the children that Judah had with Tamar, his first son's wife. The twins were also wrestling in the womb. Whatever the writer was doing, he was trying to make Judah special. Like you see, this happened with Jacob and Esau. See it happening with Judah's children too. But yeah, so pretty much, we went through the whole Jacob and Israel, Edom, show them working together and all that different stuff. But definitely Edom, I mean, Divine Prospect called in a couple of months ago, and Sonnet asked him, I said, call Divine, he tell you. Divine said, yeah. Yahweh is an Edomite God. It kills the whole doctrine. It kills the entire doctrine.
You know what's crazy? And I was preparing, and I'll probably show a few slides in a moment, a lecture on Yahweh. Like I made a hypothesis way back in 2012, 2013, that the name Yahweh was cognate with Nzambi and Yami in West Africa. And I believe I have greater evidence for that fact. But what sparked the renewed interest in it is the actual interview that I was doing with Dr. Modupe Oduyoye. And so about 20 minutes in the interview, he was, because I always ask about your life and education and how you got into what you're doing. So in that portion of the conversation, he was talking about when he went to Yale, and when he was studying at Yale University, he was telling his teacher how the word Yahweh was a what we would call in linguistics a dialectical variation of what the Romans called Jove, which is a variant of what ultimately became Jupiter. It's Jupiter. The Pitter in Jupiter is the word for father, and it's the one for God. So it's Father God. That's what Jupiter means. But the Jove, matter of fact, I'll just share my screen right now. And I'll just go from the beginning. I won't do the whole thing, but just to give a preview, I'll say from the beginning. So it's going to be towards an etymology of Yahweh, right? And hold on one sec. Just making sure everyone can see. There. Alrighty. So we're good here. Alrighty. So, and this is Yahweh. They try to use this as Yahweh's a man to go back off of what you just said earlier. And so they write it this way. Like, this is a prophecy that, Yahweh's a man, because you just rearrange the Hebrew writing. And so this is the Y, or Yah, and H, the W, and then the H again. So for those who don't read the Hebrew script, and you read from right to left. And so this is Dr. Modupe Oduyoye again. And what is also, and we'll have to talk about this either later or some other time, in that discussion, in that interview as well, he's arguing ultimately. So remember, we had this conversation about who were the Hebrew Israelites, and I was like, they're black, kind of, right? And I was, one of the sources that I would talk about is this here, The Sons of Gods and the Daughters of Men by Dr. Modupe Oduyoye. So here's a map where he's showing the evolution in terms of, but he, in this discussion, what he's saying is that they ultimately come from India, and that they brought with them a certain type of cattle that you find all throughout, North and West Africa, that comes from there. And when, they came and they settled amongst, and so this is why you see like the different coloration and phenotypes of the Fulani, the Bororo, the Hapiru, the Iber-Iram, which becomes the Hebrews, et cetera, all throughout this space. That's another conversation. Anyway, again, it's on Patreon. That's the link. So what he was saying is that in Rome and Latin, Jove is it's the word for God. And so etymology informs us that it comes from the word Joe or Jose in Proto-Indo-European. This is where you get the word Dios, from, and Zeus. And so it ultimately comes from a root meaning to shine, right? And so you'll see it reconstructed in various different ways. And so for those who are not familiar with, linguistics, W often, depending on the language, turn into V as in Victor, or it could turn into O or U or U, so you'll find it all throughout the place. So the online etymological dictionary informs us that this root meaning to shine in other languages, it has a derived meaning of sky, heaven, and of course God. And so it's in the word Jupiter, which is Jup, or like if you're saying Jope, like Shekanti's Jope, and then Peter. So it's really Father, Jupiter or Jupiter, Father God. And so this is another source, the Oxford Introduction to Proto-Indo-European, just reaffirming what you find in the online etymological dictionary. This word here, meaning to shine, had derived meanings of sky, heaven, and God, right? And so Odeoye argues that this word Yahweh you can find in Nigeria, Cameroon border, among the Ewe, the Fon, as Yevwe. It's a word for spirit, but it's also it represents the power of thunder and lightning, which is very important to who Yahweh is. And so we know Jean-Claude Mboli, he argues that that word yo also has an African origin. And so he goes through the argument. So I'll leave this here, for those who want to come back and just read. This is my translation from from French. And y'all should know my argument that it's the Africans who left out of the Nile Valley that intermixed with the native folks that were in here. They became the Hebrews and the Arabs, or basically the Proto-Semites, and ultimately the Sumerians. But we go further, and even in Indo-European. And so it's not surprising. So you mentioned Dr. Ben earlier in The Black Man of the Nile. And so he made an argument on page 344 that you find the word Yahweh, which is, Yahoo. And this is the glyphs that are shown in the text. And so it has the foreign land glyph at the end. And then of course it has a deity. So it lets you know that this is a foreign deity. This is not a native deity here. So for those who can read the hieroglyphs or who can't read the hieroglyphs, this is, usually transliterated as I or Y. This is an H with a dot under it, and this is W. They didn't write out the vowels, so you have semi-vowels and consonants. So it's like, Yahoo, Yahweh, whatever. And what I argue is that, ultimately that name comes out of Egypt, but it's a lot older than the time of the biblical stuff. And that the original form was this dot M, that IHM, and it's this H comes from a K, and it ultimately palatalized into T into D in Indo-European. And that, and what I show is how the M sound becomes W. And so this is very important. So like, I'm pretty sure you've come across this text, Hebrewisms of West Africa by Joseph J. Williams. So he was saying, Professor Clay, the author here, Williams, is saying, Professor Clay, who assures us that in the Marushu archives found in Nippur, belonging to the reigns of Artaxerxes and Darius, the divine element in Hebrew names is written as Yama or Jawa. So dialectical. So in one group is M, and in the other group is W. And Clay also mentions a tablet found at the Tanakh, which contains the divine name of Israel, God's name written as Yami. And so this is why I always say that linguistics is very important for this particular study. And I'm just, so he mentions Professor Clay, but Professor Clay, is none other than Dr. Albert Clay, a specialist in Semitic languages and cultures at Yale University. Talking about Williams now, this is me talking. He is citing Clay's book, The Empire of the Amorites. He is important because he notes a particular sound correspondence in Semitic that is instructive for us here. In his text, he notes that some Semites use M and others W to represent the same sound. So if you want to see where this is going, so I show that same interchange you find in ancient Egyptian. So while in one dialect they'll use M, in another dialect they'll use W. And you can pause and go through this and check by that. And I show that it also the W and the I or J sound also interchanges in Egyptian, because that same root, the J or I, H, W also becomes, H, Y. And so for those who are familiar with the Egyptian pantheons, you know that this word Ihri is also a name for Set and Apophis, who's also the storm god of the Egyptians. And so you can also see this root meaning to darken of the sky. So you got to think of like a storm cloud, right? So black cloud, storms, or whatnot. And also it has to deal with stars, because it also has to deal with light. So as I always discuss, a lot of these concepts are really just in linguistics, we have a phenomenon called paronymy. And that's when people believe that certain words that sound the same or similar must be related. So they kind of merge these concepts. And so I don't know if you have this book, but this is by Dr. Yoshiyuki Muchiki. And the text is called Egyptian Proper Names and Loan Words in North Semitic. Right. And so he's showing you that a lot of the names that you find in the Bible and in around that area are actually Egyptian names. So that's how influential the Egyptians were, that, they were naming their children after Egyptians. I'm sorry, you want to say something?
Who's actually doing that at the time?
This author?
No, I'm saying, who is saying naming them after Egyptians? Who are they naming? Because I know with the tribe of Manasseh, like when they're supposedly out of Egypt, he has like 5 different descendants that got Egyptian names.
That's probably mentioned in the text. I wish I had it on me right now, but it's in my storage in Philly. Okay. But it's not just Israelites. He's talking about all of North Semitic.
Arameans and okay.
Yeah. So all of that in the Levant area, he's talking about. He's showing you in each of the different languages and groups and time periods or whatnot, the Egyptian names that they have adopted and was naming their children. So, but I show this just to show the sound correspondences. So Egyptian, that I corresponds to the glottal stop in Hebrew, or the Y, and you see the W also corresponds with W in Hebrew. But anyway, what I'm showing is that word for light. So remember that Jove comes from a root meaning to shine. It's really like a word for fire, and the word to shine is a different derivative meaning, from the root meaning fire, to burn, heat. And you find this even in Egyptian. But with the point that I'm making here is that the word for fire and heat becomes words for destruction.
I get where you go.
Ruin, things of that nature. So I'm doing this so you can understand the characteristics of Yahweh. And why Yahweh is Yahweh. So I'll be in another time. I'll be more specific.
I gotta email you this book, Yahweh Before Israel. I gotta get it to you because it's a new book, but he talks about the name Yahweh as a verb, personal names. Daniel Fleming, he goes into this whole thing about Yahweh. So I mean, I'm gonna send it to you if it might be helpful.
Yeah, I mean, please. This is this is some ongoing research for me.
Yeah.
But
Let
this
me.
is something
What's
I've
your
been dealing
email?
with for a while.
What's your email, by the way?
info@asarimhotep.com.
All right, cool.
And so I'm just showing this in Arabic and in Hebrew that it's the same thing. So notice this word here, Yahim, be hot with anger or desire, conceive in Hebrew. Do violence. They all come from a root meaning hot. And I'm getting this from the PhD dissertation, The Biradical Origin of Semitic Roots, by Dr. Bernice V. Hecker. And so what I want to show is that HM turns into HW, and it's that same root that ultimately becomes Yahweh in the Semet in the Hebrew. The root of Yahweh is a word meaning shimmering light, shining light, and then with the J prefix becomes the god Jehuti, who we all know is also the moon god of ancient Kemet. And it's also, the same consonants, because we're dealing with paronymy, has to deal with blow, impact, violence, but also the flood and rain. I'm trying to make a connection here.
Yeah,
and I don't know.
yeah. Because Yahweh is now considered, the last time is now considered like a storm raging God.
Yes.
So that's where it's at right now.
But I don't know if you've come across this text here. Yahweh and the sun, biblical and archaeological evidence for sun worship in ancient Israel.
Wow.
And so Dr. John Glenn Taylor from the Biblical Archaeological Society, this is an edited text, so it's different scholars, and if you need it, I'll send it to you. And they talk about the relationship between the fire and light and stuff with the sun. So we got to understand that in ancient societies, even though we like to lump everyone together, you had groups who may have believed or venerated certain aspects of deity while others emphasize another. But it's all the collective. It's just like in ancient Egypt, like it's not really one doctrine. It's like you had different sects, just like you have different sects of the conscious community,
right?
And different sects of Muslims and the Nation of Islam and the Hebrew Israelites. Some are New Testament Hebrew Israelites, some are Old Testament, Hebrew Israelites, and yada yada yada. So this is a very important text to have. This is a good book. It's not about Israelites, but to understand geomythology and how natural phenomena ends up becoming personified, as deities. And so this book here is Natural Knowledge in Pre-Classical Antiquity, Mott T. Green. And this is just a description of the text over here, not from the text itself. But I wanted to highlight here Yahweh as a storm god in a volcano. Because what a lot of folks don't realize is that a volcano, when it erupts, the gases that emerge out of the volcano can reach the skies and cause storms and lightning and thunder and all of that. And a volcano is already thunderous itself. So all of these characteristics coming out of a volcano, some emphasize the light and heat and danger aspects in terms of the sun, and others, utilize this in terms of the volcano. And so you have those verses, for example, Psalms 29. The coal or the voice of Yahweh is heard upon the flooded waters. El of Kabud causes thunder. So you're talking about the thunder, God and all this other kind of stuff. The voice of Yahweh is in power. The voice of Yahweh is in majestic splendor, dealing with light, again, shining light, lightning. The voice of Yahweh breaks the cedars. Yahweh causes the cedars of Lebanon to be broken. The voice of Yahweh makes the lightning flash. So he's talking about the thunder and lightning aspects of Yahweh. He's a volcano god. In Job, listen to the boom of his voice. A rumbling goes out of his mouth. He lets it roll under the whole sky, and his hor reaches the ends of the earth. His light, his that's what the word means. After it booms, his voice and thunders his majesty's voice. In Kings, here Eliyahu tells the prophets of Baal, you will then invoke your God by name, and I will invoke Yahweh by name. Let us agree, the God who responds with fire is the God.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and we can go on as even in Exodus, you know, him being on the mountain and fire and brimstone, like all that comes from volcanoes. Yahweh is a volcano God.
Mm-hmm.
And this is some linguistics, and I'll show you how that even Yahweh, the word Yahweh itself, could come just from a word thunder. But I'll save that for later. But what I want to ultimately say is that if, you know, Yahweh really is cognate with the Jove, then Yahweh really is the Israelites' version of Zeus. Because Zeus is a essentially a volcanic god who rests at the top of the mountain, who sends down thunderbolts and things. So this is coming from explosions. So that's all Yahweh is. So you can see these Black Hebrew Israelites, you know, making these kinds of things, not understanding, and they want to talk about other gods in the Edomite. So with your chapter is saying that this is basically an Edomite god, and we all know the influence that the Greeks had in the area. This is through their pronunciation of words. And we in that last H is what we call a parasitic H. It's the same one found in Arabic for the word Allah, or Allah, so to speak. And so it's no different. For example, there's another variation of a volcanic god, and that's where that other book comes into play. Like when you see a cyclops, you know, and with the one eye, because of course a volcano just has the one hole at the top. Like this is how they personify it, and we personify it in modern days under the X-Men, you know, so where he has the one eye and it shoots out fire, you know. And like this is very important for us to kind of understand. So I'll be doing a whole thing, and I'll show how Yahweh is even cognate with Ogun in West Africa. But I think your text adds to the discussion, and the linguistics is going to bear out that essentially the Hebrew Israelites worship Zeus in the form of Yahweh or Jove or Jupiter, and that's why he has all the characteristics, you know, and why he's such a violent and mean God is because
makes a lot of sense.
You know, and storm god, because these causes storms. And then this was associated, you know, an original or a separate association you find in Egypt with Seth, but Seth is always associated with the Asiatics in the first place, you know, these nomadic Asiatics,
virus, right?
You know. So but yeah, I don't know how much time I have with you, so we going on 2 hours.
Yeah, this is a lot of time.
You've been on
all day long.
all day long.
Oh man! But before I even get off the air with you, I want to say thank you first of all for having me on your channel, and I want to say thank you for your viewers who supported and who has bought the book, because you know my thing is blinking. People are buying the books, so that's a good thing. I spoke to someone this morning about translating in French. And so that's going to be in the works, because I know I probably could sell probably 500 books in France, probably, because I mean I did the interview over there, got over 20,000 viewers. So and me and brother Sarnetta is supposed to go to UK, I think probably July 28th to the 3rd. That's going to be huge. Some people from France are coming over to film us, and we're going to be on the corners, man, the legendary Speaker's Corner. You know, I would invite you, but you know, you work and you got 10 jobs like a Jamaican. So.
Go to the UK.
Speaker's Corner is classic, man. That's classic right there. And then I'm going to Jamaica, I think the following week. I got to do a couple of interviews and hide from the Rastafarians, but that's about it.
Gonna
nothing
do
crazy.
security for you. I'm in Raw Squad security.
Yeah,
For
man.
Brother Garfield.
Mhm.
No, man, it's been a pleasure, and I'm honored to have you. So, first and foremost, congratulations
Thank you.
on the completion. So, for those who don't write text, scholarly text, you don't know how much effort it is to develop a text like that and to organize one's thoughts and to be thinking about arguments and how people are going to argue and this and what I need to include and how much money is spent on books, how much time, goes into having to read like, 20 journal articles and end up using 2 lines out of all 20, but important to the greater discussion, of your text, and
Mhm.
having to contact this and this expert and see if, and then them, of course, giving you more stuff to read, and then you got to do that and come with your arguments, and it's a lot of work, and so it's not for the faint of heart. And so, welcome to the club. And of course, you're going to get a whole bunch of scrutiny, and I'm gonna scrutinize this book too, just because I have to. I can't.
Right, right.
It's just part of the game. The game is the game in my the Wire voice. But so far, it looks like he's citing uh, reputable sources, and I can't wait to see how how everything ties in together. And so there's a few chapters that really pique my interest, and I can't wait to delve further into it. So um always happy to support a fellow friend and author,
Mhm.
regardless in their business or whatever it is. But
Right.
this is the text, Misconceptions and Misinformation, by the Black Hebrew Israelites, Volume 1. So that's an indication that there's more to come. And so if there is more to come in the second volume, do you have an estimated date?
I'm looking at January 1st. I mean, it's done. The whole book.
Okay.
The book originally is like 480 pages. I had to cut out the Deuteronomy 28 chapters, like 90 pages by itself. So I pretty much broke down the slave trade. Because I don't think people know what the slave trade is. I really don't. When I think about places like Azarus, I asked Captain Tazar the other day, what about the people in Azarus? He's like, Azar what? I even caught Rawbone off guard. You don't realize that the sugar is because the sugar is really the reason why the slave trade happened and blew up the way it did. If sugar didn't produce molasses and the molasses and the whole rum thing, and they did it in these islands that had nobody on them. So the Portuguese were slick. So when they had those people working on those lands, and they said, "Oh, we could get these Africans to go here and here and here and here," and then because of what happened with the African is Superman, we don't get killed by the European diseases as easy as the natives. So we became the Superman. So hey, let's bring them to Brazil, and that took the whole cake, man. That's what led to everything. We come into the West. But hey, those people that were taken, the first people that were taken by the Portuguese, what tribe are they on the chart? What tribe? How would they be on that 12 tribe chart? Where would they fit in? The people in the Netherlands, the ones that went to Portugal, the ones that went to the Atlantic Islands, Azores or Sao Tome, Cape Verde. What tribe would they be in? It's crazy.
It
And at
looks
the
like
same time,
no, I'm just saying it looks like over the years, because again, I haven't been a Hebrew Israelite since the 90s. And so much has changed in terms of, who they include in now and all this other kind of stuff. So I'm not sure what the criterion is now, but I know back then it was some of the most flimsy excuse for scholarship ever in the universe. And that's ultimately why I had to leave. So, the more you study and the more skills you gain in terms of research, the more you cannot accept the doctrines of a lot of these that's within the various religious discourse. But I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that the people that what people don't realize, while the transatlantic slave trade was going on, there was another slave trade going on at the same time out of Africa. And what are those people? Or do they fit the 400-year prophecy? I mean, like, it's just
in Arabia. So that would mean the lost tribes are also in Arabia and in the area in places like Yemen because they.
But you know what? Let me cut you off and say this. What I did find, though, the ultimate dagger is the Assyrians taking the Israelites back to Egypt on record.
Hmm.
You know, the Deuteronomy 28:68,
Yeah.
and you take it back in the ships. Boom. I found it in the Assyrian records.
Hmm.
They actually took an Israelite king and members back to Egypt on ships. Very interesting. Very interesting.
But then they'll be like, see, the Bible's true. So then all you just did right now is just, the Howard Shai is coming back. We all going to start greeting each other now. Yahweh, Shai, what was that damn greeting? Yahweh Shai, Barakatah,
Oh,
crazy.
Man. I need to catch that. You got to teach me that. It just sounds so cool, man. Hey, to the uneducated, it's like the greatest feeling to say that.
Like they mispronounce the Hebrew all willy nilly, but yeah, it's interesting. But yeah, so in other words, volume 2 is you're gonna let this breathe for a little bit. And then you're going to release volume 2 scheduled for January 2022.
Yep. Volume 2 is sick. Because I deal with prophecies.
Yeah.
Prophecies is like the ultimate. Once you take away the lost tribes argument, and you take away second Esdras, you show the 90% that remained in the land. You show that the Judah, and by the way, to Judah, the chapter on Sennacherib and Judah is, I'm proving that there's a lost tribes of Judah, because they said, the Assyrians said they took 200,000, and the Judeans in the Bible, it says that they took all the fortified cities. So they actually agree, but not, I don't know about, the number is kind of crazy. I don't know about 200,000 people, but those people would be considered lost. They're gone. So at the end of the day, where are those people at?
But then see, but when you say lost, are you saying that, for example, if you represent a tribe, right? You're the personification of a tribe. And so you're a tribe of Benjamin. I'm tribe of Judah. I was taken or I migrated, whatever. Am I lost because you don't know where I am? Or am I lost because I forgot who I was? And if the tribes still remember that they were tribes, how are they lost? That's a question, like, lost to who?
It's actually a mockery, but yeah, go ahead.
The random people who was writing the Bible didn't know where they was, or is that really the case?
But those particular people who were actually taken to the Mesopotamian areas or Assyrian Empire, they basically cleaned out the whole of Judah, because remember when the Babylonians came, they also took people out of Judah and left like around 1,500 people. So at the end, inside of Jerusalem. But I think that the book is gonna get a lot of people upset, but it's gonna create a dialogue. We're gonna create a nice little dialogue.
I'm gonna let you be the sacrificial lamb, because I'm gonna be releasing next year my book on the meaning of Kemet. So that'll be the equivalent, on the Egypt side on this issue of Kemet. So I'm gonna be studying you, learning, and see what they're gonna do. Blue recording. You're gonna take all these daggers and shots from all the Hebrews. All the Hebrews gonna unite. They ain't like each other before you wrote this book. Now they all gonna come together.
Yeah. Somebody make video already saying I missed a quotation mark and I didn't put a comma. I'm like, oh man, craziness. But hey, it is what it is, man. But thank you for inviting me on, bro.
No problem.
I think this is a smooth interview. You did beat me up a couple of times, but it's all good. We can't win them all.
No, man. But again, I look forward and I'll have another discussion and have you back on, just cause. That's
All
just
right,
what
cool.
we do, here.
All right, man. Definitely. Thank you, bro.
Everybody, y'all can go to brothergarfielduniversity.com and purchase the book. And you can find them on all the major social media platforms. I have the link in the description already, so that you can just click and y'all make sure that y'all like and share this video and keep the conversation going. Support our good brother. And I will see y'all in the future. Got some powerful interviews, coming up, and some lessons that I will have for the Patreon members, and we're just going to get it in. So with that being said, God bless y'all. Good night. And Yahweh Shabbat Barakatham. And all
Why you bite your tongue, man?
Because it just feels so crazy. Like, I hope there's no photos. I bet there is. Matter of fact, I hope there is some photos. I don't have any photos of me back in my Hebrew Israelite garments and my fringes, up in Harlem or whatnot back in the day.
I think I'm gonna do an after party on Dagger Squad for like a few minutes. I see what Jao asking where the after party at. So let me just throw an after party up.
After party is going to be at Brother Garfield's Dagger Squad channel. And so that means y'all going to be there all night, because then, you're going to let all the Hebrews on, and then it's going to be a fight and debate into the wee hours,
man, no, they're not. I'm going to do probably 15 minutes. All right, bro. Thanks a lot, man. Again, appreciate it. Peace and love. Hey, by the way, with Jao, I was told yesterday that the cover of the book was plagiarized from Lion Lex. He made a flyer on his timeline. Shout out to Ujah for making that excellent cover, man. Excellent cover. Thank you, man. All right, I'm out of here, family. Peace and love.
Yeah, man. Of course, y'all can catch me on, let me get that out the way, that banner, and various different social media platforms. So if y'all want to continue the conversation, and I'll let y'all know when we have the Yahweh discussion, because I'm going to break it all down. Yahweh is Zeus. That's going to be the title. But anyway, y'all have a blessed night and weekend. See you next time.